shadows are alive tonight. Can you hear it? The faint groan in the distance, the scrape of rotting nails against cracked concrete. They're out there, lurking beyond the glow of your screen, hungry for flesh, and you're their next meal. Welcome to the Zombie Story Zone, where the apocalypse isn't coming, it's already here. Beneath these words, the dead are stirring. Cities rot, survivors scramble, and every heartbeat could be your last. But you're safe, for now. Or are you? Hit that like button before it's too late. Subscribe and smash the bell to arm yourself, because when the horde breaches your feed, you'll want every warning you can get. Share this story with your friends, if you dare. Let them taste the fear, the desperation, the chilling truth that no wall is unbreakable. And when the credits roll, don't flee yet, comment below. Tell us, did you survive the night? What horrors should we unleash next? Your voice could be the difference between salvation and slaughter. The Zombie Story Zone feeds on your screams. So stay close. Stay quiet. And whatever you do, don't look behind you.
The Zombie Story Zone, let the fun begin. Welcome to the Zombie Story Zone, where the tales of the undead are widely known. Trying to hunt, uncover the fright in the zone.
The sun never rose anymore, not really. A blood-red haze lingered over Novivitis, the last human city, its towering steel walls glowing faintly under the hum of the electromagnetic shield. Outside, the deadlands stretched for miles, skeletal trees, crumbling highways, and the things that used to be people. They shambled in the shadows, their hollow moans echoing like a never-ending storm. Elena Cruz adjusted her visor, the green-tinted display flickering as she scanned the horizon. Her gloved fingers tightened around the grip of her pulse rifle. 3 years, she thought. 3 years since the outbreak. 3 years since Novivitis became humanity's final stand. The city's founders had promised safety. They'd built walls laced with sonic disruptors, AI-controlled sniper turrets, and underground farms to sustain the 50,000 survivors. But Elena knew better. Safety was an illusion. Movement at Sector 7, crackled a voice in her earpiece. Marcus, her tech partner, sounded tense. Thermals show a horde. Bigger than usual. Elena sprinted to the nearest guard tower, her boots clanging on the metal walkway. Below, the city buzzed with false normalcy, children laughing, vendors selling synth meat skewers, holographic ads flashing Novivitis, where tomorrow thrives. She gritted her teeth. They don't know how close we are to the edge. At the tower, Marcus hunched over a bank of screens, his dreadlocks tied back. Look, he said, zooming in. The thermal feed showed hundreds of glowing figures lurching toward the wall. But something was wrong. These weren't the slow, rotting ghouls they usually faced. These moved faster. Since when do they sprint? Elena muttered. Since never. Marcus tapped a command, and the wall's turrets whirred to life. Activating defense grid. Let's hope the power holds. The first wave hit. Bullets ripped through the horde, limbs flying, black blood splattering the shields. But the faster zombies, sprinters, leaped onto the walls, clawing at the metal. The shield flickered. They're overloading the system. Marcus shouted. Elena grabbed a grenade launcher. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. The air in the command center smelled of burnt metal and sweat. Elena Cruz leaned over the holographic map table, her knuckles white as she braced herself against the flickering blue light. The screens around her showed damage reports from the western wall, a jagged scar in Novivitis' otherwise pristine defenses. 6 names blinked in red on the casualty list: Rico, Jansen, Tran. Soldiers she'd trained, laughed with, promised to protect. Their faces haunted her now. Mayor Halpern swept into the room, his tailored suit crisp, his silver hair gleaming under the artificial lights. He carried a tablet in one hand and a too-wide smile on his face. Behind him trailed Dr. Voss, the city's lead scientist, a wiry woman with cold eyes and a lab coat stained with something dark. Commander Cruz. Halpern boomed, as if addressing a crowd rather than a room of exhausted soldiers. A heroic defense. The council will award medals, of course. Parades. The people need hope, after all. Elena straightened, her voice sharp. Hope won't fix the shields, Mayor. Or bring back the dead. Halpern's smile tightened. Now. Sacrifices are inevitable. What matters is that Novivitis stands. He gestured to Dr. Voss, who tapped her tablet. A hologram of the underground farms materialized, rows of glowing algae tanks, their neon green contents swirling under UV lights. Thanks to Dr. Voss's brilliance, our food crisis is solved. This algae grows 10 times faster than our old crops. No more empty stomachs. Elena's jaw clenched. She'd tasted the algae rations. They left a metallic aftertaste, like licking a battery. And the side effects? People are getting sick. Blurred vision. Hallucinations. Dr. Voss cut in, her voice clinical. Minor adjustments to the formula are ongoing. A small price for survival. Small? Elena stepped closer, her glare locking onto the scientist. Tell that to the kid I saw puking his guts out in Sector 9. Halpern cleared his throat. Let's focus on the positives, shall we? The shield will be repaired by dawn. Our city is unbreakable. But Elena saw the flicker in his eyes, the way his fingers drummed nervously against his thigh. He's hiding something. That night, Elena walked the lower sectors, where the city's glow didn't reach. The air here was thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and simmering anger. Makeshift tents lined the streets, their occupants staring hollow-eyed as she passed. A woman clutched a photograph of a missing husband. A man rocked back and forth, muttering about shadows in the vents. She found Doc Riley's clinic tucked between a gutted arcade and a boarded-up noodle shop. The doc was patching up a scavenger's mangled arm, his robotic fingers stitching flesh with mechanical precision. The patient, a gaunt man named Tarek, hissed through broken teeth. Saw something out there, Commander, he rasped, nodding to Elena. In the Deadlands. Zombs, but different. Like they was, watching us. Doc Riley snorted. You were high on painkillers, Tarek. Wasn't the drugs. Tarek insisted, his eyes wild. They moved in packs. Didn't attack, just stared. Like they was learnin' dot. Elena's skin prickled. She tossed Tarek a protein bar. Rest up. And stay off the rooftops. When the scavenger limped out, Doc handed Elena a flask of homemade hooch. He's not the first to babble about smart zombs. Had a kid in here last week, swore they were digging tunnels under the walls. Elena took a swig, the liquor burning her throat. You believe him? Believe? Doc grunted. I believe the algae's rotting people's brains faster than the zombs could. But this, he pulled a blood-smeared file from under his desk. Med reports. 12 people vanished last month. Not just loners. Families. Kids. Elena flipped through the pages. A photo fell out, a little girl's drawing of a nice monster with glowing green eyes. The date on the corner was 2 days before the child disappeared. Mayor's got patrols saying it's unauthorized scavenging, Doc muttered. But you and I know scavengers don't leave no trace. Elena's boots echoed as she descended into the Undercity, where the shield generators throbbed like a mechanical heartbeat. The walls here were lined with faded graffiti, Halpern lies, and where's my son? She stopped at a rusted door marked Sector 12, authorized personnel only. A keypad glowed red. Elena pulled a hack chip from her belt, a gift from Marcus, and jammed it into the port. The door hissed open. Cold air rushed out, carrying a smell that made her gag, antiseptic and rot. The corridor beyond was sterile white, lit by flickering fluorescence. Elena followed the hum of machinery, her pulse rifle raised. Voices echoed ahead. She pressed against a wall, peering into a lab where Dr. Voss stood over a surgical table. Strapped to it was a teenage boy, his skin mottled gray, veins bulging black. Tubes pumped a glowing green liquid into his arms. Subject 23's vitals are stabilizing, Dr. Voss said to a lab assistant. The serum's bonding with his nervous system. Prepare the cognitive test. The boy's eyes snapped open, milky white, pupils dilated. He screamed, a guttural, inhuman sound, thrashing against his restraints. Dr. Voss sighed. Increased the sedative. And fetched the next volunteer from Sector 8. Elena's blood turned to ice. Volunteer. She retreated, her mind racing. But as she turned, a hand clamped over her mouth. Don't move. Marcus's voice was a whisper in her ear. He dragged her into a supply closet, his face pale under his hood. You wanna die tonight? That lab's crawling with Halpern's guards. Elena shoved him off. They're experimenting on people. Turning them into. I know, Marcus interrupted. He pulled up a holoscreen on his wrist device, showing encrypted files. Halpern's cure isn't for the living. It's a countermeasure. They're trying to create hybrids, humans that emit a pheromone to repel the infected. But it's not stable. The screen showed footage of a man in a cell, his jaw unhinging like a snake's as he tore at his own skin. The test subjects go feral, Marcus said quietly. Halpern's dumping the failed ones in the deadlands. But some don't die. They just change. Elena stared at the lab door. The smarter Zoms Tarek saw. They're not evolving. They're Halpern's mistakes. Marcus nodded. And if the horde outside gets a hold of one of these hybrids? They'll tear through the walls like paper. A shout echoed down the hall. Breach in Sector 5. All units. The rest was drowned out by a deafening crunch. The ceiling shuddered, dust raining down. Somewhere above, the shield's hum stuttered and died. Marcus grabbed Elena's arm. They're inside. The elevator groaned as it descended, its rusty gears screeching like a wounded animal. Elena's breath fogged in the sudden chill, her pulse rifle trembling ever so slightly in her grip. Marcus stood beside her, his hood pulled low, fingers dancing nervously over the holographic interface of his wrist device. The dim emergency lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across their faces. Shields down to 20%, Marcus muttered, eyeing the data feed. If the grid fails completely, the turrets won't last an hour. Elena didn't reply. Her mind replayed the image of the boy in Dr. Voss's lab, his gray skin, his unhinged scream. Volunteers. The word tasted like a lie. The elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors creaked open, revealing a corridor swallowed by darkness. The air here was thick with the stench of bleach and decay, undercut by a sour, metallic tang that made Elena's throat burn. Marcus activated a portable UV light, its beam cutting through the gloom to reveal walls streaked with blackened fluid. Dried handprints, too large to be human, smeared the steel panels. This isn't a lab, Elena whispered. It's a tomb. They moved silently, their footsteps muffled by the spongy, damp floor. The corridor branched into a maze of sealed doors, each marked with a numbered code. Elena paused at room 7B, its keypad cracked and sparking. Marcus hacked it open, revealing a storage closet stacked with supplies and a crumpled lab coat, its pocket sewn with the name Dr. Elias Grant. Elena recognized the name. Grant had been Novivitis' chief virologist. He'd vanished 6 months ago, labeled a deserter by Halpern. Look, Marcus said, holding up Grant's faded journal. Pages were torn out, but one entry remained. Day 87, the serum is fracturing their minds. They hear the horde, like a song. Halpern won't stop. Says we're close. But what's left of them isn't human. It's something worse. A guttural moan echoed down the hall. Elena snapped her rifle toward the sound, but the darkness swallowed the UV light. We're not alone, Marcus breathed. The central lab was a nightmare made real. Rows of glass tanks stretched into the shadows, each filled with murky green fluid. Inside floated humanoid figures, some skeletal, their flesh sloughing off, others bloated and twitching as if dreaming. Tubes snaked into their mouths, noses, and chests, pumping viscous black liquid. One figure stirred as Elena approached, its milky eyes opening. It pressed a clawed hand against the glass, mouthing a silent plea. Subject 19 read the tank's label. Male, 34. Stage 4 hybridization. Cognitive function degraded. Aggression high. They're alive, Marcus said, horrified. They're aware. Elena's stomach churned. She recognized a woman in a nearby tank, Mara-chan, a mechanic from Sector 6 who'd disappeared weeks ago. Mara's left arm was grotesquely elongated, her fingers fused into bony talons. They're using us as lab rats, Elena snarled. Halpern's volunteers are prisoners. A door hissed open behind them. Fluorescent light spilled into the room, and Mayor Halpern strode in, flanked by 2 armored guards. Dr. Voss followed, clutching a tablet, her expression unreadable. Commander Cruz, Halpern said coolly. I'd say I'm surprised, but let's be honest, you were always too stubborn to ignore the rot. Elena leveled her rifle at him. You're murdering your own people. Sacrificing few to save many, Halpern snapped. The horde evolves every day. We needed a weapon. And we found it. He gestured to the tanks. Their blood emits a pheromone that repels the infected. 1 dose, and you're invisible to those monsters. At what cost? Marcus shouted, pointing to Subject 19. They're turning into them. Dr. Voss stepped forward, her voice clinical. The serum rewrites mitochondrial DNA. Yes, there are physical changes. But their minds remain intact. Mostly. Mostly? Elena echoed. A scream tore through the lab. A tank near the back shattered as Subject 24, a teenage girl with serrated teeth and glowing veins, burst free. She lunged at a guard, her jaws closing around his throat before he could scream. Blood sprayed the walls as the other guard opened fire, but the girl moved like liquid, her bones cracking and reforming as she dodged. Contain it! Halpern barked, backing toward the door. Elena grabbed Marcus and Dove behind a lab table as bullets ricocheted. The hybrid girl screeched, a sound that vibrated in Elena's bones, and leaped onto the ceiling, her limbs bending at impossible angles. They're not zombies, Marcus whispered, terrified. There's something new. Dr. Voss yanked a syringe from her coat and stabbed it into her own neck. Her veins pulsed black, and the hybrid froze, cocking its head at her like a confused dog. See? Voss panted. The serum works. I'm kin to them now. But the hybrid's nostrils flared. It sniffed the air, then lunged at Voss, tearing into her shoulder. The pheromone's failing. Marcus yelled. Halpern bolted for the exit. Elena fired at the hybrid, but it vanished into the vents, leaving only a trail of oily blood. The shield. Marcus pulled up a hologram showing Sector 5's wall. The external cameras flickered with static, but not before Elena saw them, hundreds of hybrids, their eyes glowing green, scaling the barriers like spiders. They're not attacking the city, Elena realized. They're hurting the horde. The building shook. Alarms blared. Critical breach in Sector 5. All personnel evacuate. The air in Novivitis was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of burning flesh. Elena Cruz crouched behind a collapsed concrete pillar, Zoe trembling against her side. The girl's small fingers dug into Elena's arm, her breath coming in shallow, rapid bursts. Above them, the sky was a sickly orange, lit by the dying shield's sporadic bursts of energy. The screams of the infected mingled with the panicked shouts of survivors, a cacophony that clawed at Elena's resolve. Elena! Marcus's voice crackled through her earpiece, barely audible over the chaos. The data chip, it's not just a transmitter. The serum rewrites DNA. It's making the horde evolve. They're not just repelled, they're drawn to it. Elena clenched her jaw, memories flashing unbidden, her younger brother, Diego, begging her to stay as she left to join the city guard. You'll die out there, he'd said. He'd been right. Diego was ash now, like the rest of Sector 3. Explain, she barked, firing at a sprinting hybrid that lunged from a shattered storefront. Its claws grazed her thigh before it collapsed, twitching. The hybrid's pheromones, they're a homing beacon, Marcus panted. Halpern's cure is why the horde's getting smarter. They're learning from the hybrids. Adapting. Zoe whimpered as a nearby explosion rocked the street.
Elena pulled her closer, her mind racing.
They're not just monsters. They're students. The lab's fluorescent lights flickered like strobes, casting jagged shadows over the rows of broken tanks.
Mayor Halpern's body lay twisted on the floor, his throat torn open, his fingers still curled around the empty serum syringe. His eyes, glassy and unblinking, stared accusingly at Elena.
"You don't understand," he gurgled before the sprinter took him. "We had to become them to survive."
Now, Dr. Voss's failed experiment, Subject 24, crouched in the corner, her serrated teeth gnawing on a guard's femur. The hybrid's glowing green eyes locked onto Elena, but it didn't attack.
Instead, it tilted its head, a grotesque mimicry of curiosity.
"It recognizes you," Marcus whispered, his holographic interface projecting a shaky schematic of the shield generator. "The hybrids, they retain fragments of their memories."
"That thing might have been someone you knew." Elena's chest tightened. The hybrid's tattered lab coat bore a name tag, Lila. A lab assistant from the hydroponic farms. She'd brought Elena coffee once, laughing about the algae's awful taste. "Lila?"
Elena whispered, lowering her rifle an inch. The hybrid flinched, a low whine escaping its throat. For a heartbeat, the monster faded, and the woman flickered through, terrified, trapped. Then it snarled, retreating into the vents with a screech. "The generator," Marcus urged.
"Overload its core, and the pulse will fry every infected thing in the city. But the radiation, it'll kill anyone left."
Elena stared at him.
"Including you."
Marcus smiled faintly, tapping the photo pinned to his workstation, a woman and a young boy, both dust-covered but grinning.
Mia and Theo.
They didn't make it to Novivitis.
Been carrying this since the outbreak. His voice cracked. "Let me do this. For them." The control room trembled as the shield's final barriers failed.
On the monitors, hybrids scaled the walls, herding the shambling horde into kill zones, only to dismantle the turrets with terrifying precision.
Zoe tugged Elena's sleeve. "The nice monster, the one from my drawing, it's here. It's sad." Elena knelt, wiping ash from the girl's face. "Nice monsters aren't real, kid."
"Yes, they are," Zoe insisted, pulling a crumpled sketch from her pocket.
The creature had glowing eyes and a smudged smile. "It's hiding. But it wants to help."
A roar shook the room. Outside the door, a hybrid twice the size of the others, its skin studded with bony plates, slammed into the reinforced steel. Marcus cursed, fingers flying over the generator's controls.
"1 minute, Elena. Go!"
Elena hesitated, her hand hovering over the grenade belt.
"I could stay. Fight. And die a martyr?" Marcus snapped. "Save the kid. That's how you beat Halpern, by staying human."
The door buckled. The hybrid's claws punched through, snatching Marcus's arm. He screamed, blood soaking his sleeve, but didn't let go of the controls.
"Now, Elena." She grabbed Zoe and ran, the girl's screams echoing her own.
Behind them, the world turned white.
The rover's engine sputtered as Elena swerved around a collapsed building. In the rearview mirror, Novivitis burned, its skeleton outlined against the pulse's fading glow.
Zoe curled in the passenger seat, clutching her drawing.
"Will there be another city?" she asked quietly. Elena didn't answer.
Her mind replayed Marcus's final moments, the hybrid's grip, his defiant smile.
Sacrificing few to save many.
Halpern's words, but Marcus had meant them differently.
A growl rumbled in the rover's back seat. Elena's breath froze.
Slowly, she adjusted the rearview mirror. The creature was hunched, its bony plates retracted to reveal scarred, humanish skin. Glowing green eyes met hers in the reflection. It held up a mangled hand, no, a human hand, and pressed it against the glass.
A faded tattoo peeked through the grime, Mia. Zoe turned, her face lighting up. "See? Nice monster."
The hybrid Mia growled again, but softly.
Almost apologetic.
Then it vanished out the hatch, melting into the shadows.
Elena and Zoe crawl through a maintenance tunnel as the city shook.
Above, the shield flared blinding white. A pulse of energy ripped through Novivitis. The horde screeched, collapsing into ash.
But the pulse kept growing. The reactor's overloading. Elena shouted. We need to reach the hangar.
They stumbled into a garage, where a solar-powered rover sat.
Elena revved the engine, crashing through the gates.
Behind them, Novivitis exploded, a fireball lighting the deadlands.
Zoe cried silently. Elena drove into the wasteland, the rover's headlights cutting through the dark. Where are we going? Zoe asked. Elena stared at the horizon. Somewhere safe. But as the rover vanished into the ruins, a faint growl echoed in the distance.
Somewhere, the horde lived.
And they were hungry.
In the shadows of the night, where the moonlight glows, zombies lurking everywhere, that's how the